Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So with today, I actually wanted to share something that was pretty interesting. So I listened to this podcast. Let me find out the name, but basically this podcast was super interesting to me. So it's by Jim Fortin, the Jim Fortin podcast. And basically in that podcast, very first episode, it's basically talking about, like what I said about last week about people, trying to figure out how they can start anything in general, either like drop shipping or anything they want to do in life, right? A lot of people are struggling to just start, and listening to this first episode by this podcast made me realize actually how it's important that the first step that you need to take is actually you need to become the person that you want to become, right? So find someone out there who basically you want to aspire to be, right? And the first step you need to take is you need to be them. And reason being is because when you understand kind of how to become how to be this person, or like you're sitting in the same spot as this person, you begin to do things that they are doing, right? So that means you begin to take action like how they would take action, and then eventually you'll become where they are in the end, right? So one thing that this podcast said, like a quote that I think is really, really cool and powerful, is basically, so it goes by, most people basically will live by the words have, do, and be, right? So what does this mean is basically they think that once they have something, they'll be able to do the things that they want to do, and then they'll be able to be the person that they want to be. But the problem with this is that you will never be able to have that thing if you don't actually begin or do the things that that person is actually doing, right? And to be able to do what that person is doing and to be consistent with what that person is doing, you need to be that person. So it actually needs to be the opposite of that. You need to change your life, right? You need to change yourself to be the person so that you'll eventually be able to do the things, and then by the end you'll be able to have what that person has. So yeah, and that's I think the really good way to kind of word how you can start, and how you can change yourself by starting, is that the first step you need to look at is basically you need to be the person that you want to be. Right? It doesn't mean get a Lamborghini and all these things. It just means you need to live the same life by doing the things that they are doing, right? Whatever that's, all these morning routines and stuff, they don't help you become a millionaire, right? They don't help you with dropshipping, but these morning routines and stuff like that help you become disciplined, right? Because if the person you want to become, right, and they're always doing cold plunges and they're always doing meditation every morning, right, for the first hour, whatever it is, and you kind of just follow in their footsteps, eventually you get to a point where you feel very accomplished by yourself by taking action with doing all these things, right? And so I think it's actually, in some ways, actually important to do these things. I know out there, there's also a lot of gurus and just people in general who actually say it isn't important. And yeah, it isn't important with kind of the business aspect of things. However, it's important in the sense of small wins, and important in the sense of feeling accomplished with yourself and feeling disciplined that you taking these small steps, eventually you feel like you can do anything. And so yeah, in a lot of ways, these are important, but obviously, people don't really tell you how it's important and how you can actually use it for yourself or understand that it actually is important for you, but the kind of way you need to look at it. So Yeah. To start, you actually need to change yourself. You need to become the person that you are not. I know for me, in the beginning, especially like kind of before I started dropshipping, was that I actually never did like meditation. I never did all these other things that all these like gurus say are good for you. And eventually I did when I first started. When I like began dropshipping, that was kind of when I looked into like all these other things like meditation and stuff like that. And I tried it. I got into like this whole routine of this, like basically the complete opposite of what I was doing beforehand, right? So I would be more like self-minded and just meditate every morning for 10 minutes. And then on the way to work, I'll put on a podcast. I won't listen to music until like 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And I had all these things, all these like goals I had in my day. And eventually got to a point like where it felt like I could actually do anything because I did all of these things that I've never done before. And I used to be a person where I was like, I didn't believe in meditation, didn't believe in listening to podcasts, or I never enjoyed listening to podcasts. But then I learned that the more I listen to podcasts, the more I'm actually learning things. And then eventually I found out that I actually like learning, right? And then that's when I also picked up reading books, and I realized that there are actually some books that I actually like to read. But then before I did all of this, I never liked books, and I always told myself I could never read a book. But once I kind of picked up these small things that had nothing to do with dropshipping, right? But it had more to do with like self-development, right? Of keeping myself busy, keeping myself disciplined to do the things that I need to get done. And eventually it led to the point where, I would be more productive with dropshipping because if I kept myself busy with all these like good things that I'm doing in life, it kind of keeps my head straight, right? I won't go out late at night. I'll try and sleep early. I won't drink. I won't smoke weed. I won't do all these drugs. Keep my brain basically clear of all these things. And then that actually led to actually benefiting me in dropshipping. But yeah, like meditation specifically, it doesn't really do anything with dropshipping, right? But it keeps your mind clear and helps you with what you need to do ahead of time. And so, yeah, like I had to change entirely the person that I was before, which was this person who liked to go clubbing, going to raves, doing drugs and sleeping out and drinking alcohol, right? Like I was like this person that I cannot recognize anymore, right? Like I haven't had alcohol for over a year, haven't done drugs for over a year, haven't gone to a nightclub in over a year, haven't even gone to a rave in over a year now. So I had to completely change, right, who I was. I literally went every night. I owned a nightclub. And so that kind of formed all these bad habits. And then eventually, if I felt like my life was just going down. And then, when I switched up, did all these different things, meditation, reading, made myself feel better. So then I kept doing it. And eventually got to a point where now I kind of realized like, yeah, it had nothing to do with dropshipping. And it didn't benefit dropshipping in general, but it benefited me in being able to keep my head straight and staying disciplined, right? And that came with, eventually got to a point where now I can spend my entire day doing dropshipping and not feel kind of like I'll like get distracted and do other stuff that I don't need to get done. So yeah, changing your entire personality, changing who you are basically, right? Because it's hard to be able to do dropshipping for like 8 to 12 hours a day. It's literally like super difficult. But then now I can't imagine myself not doing it for like 8 to 12 hours a day. Like if I don't do it for 8 to 12 hours a day, I'd feel pretty like stupid and ashamed of myself. So yeah, that's like I think a really good way to kind of think about how you can actually start is actually to be the person you want to be, right? Just do the things they're doing, act like how they act, maybe even dress how they dress. Like, obviously you wouldn't be able to get all the expensive clothes that they have, but you can kind of adopt similar styles, right? And then eventually get to a point where you kind of learn what they do And that's, how you can be that person. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you'll start actually doing what they're in the field that they're doing, right? And so that could be drop shipping. And because you're already that person, it's kind of easier to take the next step of doing what they're doing, and then get to a point where after you've done what they've done, you actually have the things that you want, which is money and a new house or retire your parents, whatever it is. Then you'll be able to have it. But if you start off like most people out there who feel like once they have something, they can do something and then become the person that they want to be. But all in all, that's actually not true. And I think that was also one of the biggest things with myself was I also felt like that, right? I also thought that, once I get $1 million, I'll be able to do what I want, and then I'll be able to be this person that I want to be. But, it's not true. It's actually far from true, because you'll never have that one thing that you're waiting for. You have to do things in order to have what you want. And in order to do things, you need to be the person you need to become to be able to even do what, they need to, that, you want to do. And that's probably why also that, when you start something, even if it's say you're doing drop shipping, but if you don't understand that you actually need to become the person first, you'll probably just do it for like 2 weeks and then give up, right? Because you're not kind of putting yourself in the same shoes as that person and understanding that things take time, and if you're happy with where you are, you just need to work harder, right? And put in the work, put in the miles, and eventually you'll get there. And so, yeah, you need to kind of understand that. And so I hope this video kind of helps you guys kind of switch your minds. I'll try and plug in that podcast so you guys can actually listen to. He speaks of all of that in like a better way than I explained it. And yeah, I'd probably recommend listening to the whole podcast. I mean, they got a lot of episodes, but so far from what I've listened to, like it seems pretty good. And the guy's like a psychologist or something. So, yeah, he says everything in a really good way, and he explains and gives really good examples for where you can kind of understand it a lot better. And I think most people will probably be able to kind of relate to the things he says and the people who he describes. I think most of you guys will be able to relate to him, because I know I kind of related to him as well. And so that's why I really wanted to share with you guys in this video. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of this. Please check out that podcast. Again, I'm not affiliated with any of it, but I just think it's something that can kind of help you maybe get your foot in the door and to start. I know a lot of you guys are still like messaging me saying it's still hard to start, right? But maybe like if you guys are listening to this, can listen to that podcast and kind of put yourself in your own shoes and see that like, oh yeah, like that's actually me. Because once someone actually tells you that this is who you are and you need to change, and maybe like because he's a scientist and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, maybe you guys will actually kind of think of it as well. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of this. Check that podcast out, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.